Great. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. We'd like to welcome you to this 60-minute webinar with Shireen and myself. We'll be co-hosting this. And in the background, we have April and the team with us for the chat and capturing all your questions.
Hi,
So
everyone.
while we wait for some, maybe 1 minute, just to, for technical issues for some people, why don't we start sharing in the chat to know where you're joining from us today? Because we know that there's a lot of people from all over the world, right?
Yeah, and we would like to get you warmed up using the chat. Today is going to be an interactive session a little bit. So while it is a webinar, we'd love for you to use the chat. Hello from Italy and Canada. Let me put me
Nice. I'm actually gonna put myself too, because I'm not in the States, right? Nice. Wow, we have from Slovakia, from Budapest, all over the world, definitely.
SoCal. I'm in NorCal. Hello. Alabama, close to my hometown, Atlanta. Amsterdam. Oh, quite a few people from the Netherlands already. Another fellow, San Francisco, Portugal. This is great. So keep bringing it in as you come on in, keep adding to the chat. And just a reminder to please add your questions in here throughout the day and to use the chat whenever possible. And we will be capturing some of those questions so that we can answer some of them at the end and then follow up at the very end on email with any additional questions that we're not able to get to.
Awesome. So let's start. Obviously, maybe some of you guys know us, maybe some. So let me introduce Shireen. I'm going to take out the screen so we can see each other. This is Shireen. I don't know if you can see her in the screen. She's been a DH consultant for many years. She's kind of a co-founding member since 2012, with more than 20 years of experience in behavioral and human development, as well as business transformation, right? To be able to unleash the potential of both. And that's a beautiful magic happens. She's executive coach to top CEOs and top leaders for Fortune 5000 leaders. Her personal passion, and that's why it's amazing to do this webinar with her, it's wholeness. And we'll see how about that links with presence and other elements today. Happiness, as you can see in her smile, I mean, full energy of happiness sharing and well-being, right? The balance between all the worlds. And she's a mom of two amazing human beings, amazing guys. She loves to dance, which I think it's great in today's environment, right? Because we need to learn how to dance in the present with all the things that are happening. And she's a great traveler. She loves to travel. Originally from Egypt. I think it's awesome. A great culture there. And welcome, Shireen. Thanks for sharing this webinar with me.
Oh, thank you so much, Carlos. It's a pleasure to be here with you. We'll go, and I just would love to share that Carlos and I have known each other for about 10 years now. And Carlos is part of the founding team along with me and a few others. And he is our Chief Strategy Officer. And really, you've been with DH even before we formed, almost from the very, very early. So you are in the DNA, my friend, and it's been an amazing journey to be with you from the United States, all over the US, to Spain, to Russia, to Egypt, to Dubai with some of our clients. So not only are you one of our great speakers and our Chief Strategy Officer, but you're also an amazing facilitator for leader alignment. So with your 15 years of experience in organizational development, it's wonderful to see the passion and focus you have in terms of bringing authentic, people-centered culture into organizations in a very unique way. Carlos is also leading our global strategy for clients, partners, and our global network. Which makes sense because he is an adventurer who has sailed across the Atlantic Ocean with his father and his best friend. So today's business environment requires that courageous spirit of resilience that you have when you can take a boat around the world. So it's wonderful to see how you've been bringing that spirit of resilience and courage to strategic leaders at Fortune 5,000 companies. And then last but not least, one of the things that I've always loved about you is your passion for music and your love of comedy. You're very funny. So he'll be the funny one today. Much funnier than I. So it's an
Oh, no pressure. Awesome. Let me move on because I'm turning red. Probably you see it in the screen, right? So you're probably interested in knowing a little bit more. What will you gain today? There's only 55 minutes left with you guys, but we wanted to share a view of today's most common challenges that you're facing at work, but also at home, which maybe today it's the same thing. We want to share also tools and tips so we're practical, so we can keep people engaged, motivated, inspired, and also productive, right? At this environment, and especially remotely, where we're combining kids and house things, and at the same time work and meetings. And we'll be able to share, and would like to share some examples of how our clients and other successful organizations are really adapting to the situation that we're living. So are you guys excited? Hopefully, yes. I don't know if I can hear you guys. So I'm assuming it's a yes.
All right, so I'd like you to get ready. We are going to play a game called Ready, Set, Chat. So take your notes, whether you do it on your computer, your iPad. Nobody uses pen and pencil anymore except a few people. Personally, I can't even read my own handwriting. So yes, with that said, we will be sending you a recording of the webinar. So if you miss anything, it'll be there. The game that we're going to play is called Ready, Set, Chat. We're going to ask you a question. You'll get ready. You'll write the response in the chat. And then once we are completed with like a few seconds to give everybody a chance to fill the chat box, we'll say, go and chat. And then everybody will hit enter at the same time. So this is our game that we'll play throughout the day. Ready, set, chat. Fill in, get the question, put the answer, and hit go. When we give you
what's the first question that we want to play with them, right? We wanted to start this game with saying, what's a challenge that you're facing today, right? Professionally or personally, what's a challenge, and anything that you're willing to share, obviously in the chat. As Shireen said, don't hit yet, right? And Shireen will give you the moment.
All right, so we'll give you a few seconds to answer what is a challenge you are facing today, personally or professionally. Fill in your chat box and get ready, set, chat, go.
Wow, lots of answers. That's quick.
There's a lot of stress, motivation, balancing. Great. Well, we hope that it is our intention today to give you a few different tools and tactics that will support you in many of these challenges.
That's awesome. We hear you working remotely. Well, that's exactly what we're seeing in organizations, right? Some of the answers that you're already giving in the chat. Not that we say it, Terry and I, or DH, but also the reports that we see from World Economic Forum and other places. The biggest challenges that we grouped in these three categories are obviously the financial piece, right? How to have more cash flow revenue and give business continuity, more strategic challenge. Then more of an operational challenge about how to work remotely and how to combine this, rules of the game have changed. And the human challenge, right? How all this previous is affecting us on top of the health elements that we know that we are suffering globally, that is creating high stress, anxiety, uncertainty, and all those elements, right? So that's exactly what organizations need to focus on. The strategic side, the operational, and the human, and they're all interconnected if we want to really transform and evolve. We only have an hour today, so we'll focus on number 2 and number 3, right? In these 4 elements that you see. So basically strategic and human, and operational and human, right? So the first one is leadership, and we'll go deeper into all of them. First one is leadership. I mean, we know leadership has been evolving for many, many years, right? But today, I think the situation has speed up that change, and they need to evolve and elevate, right? Our leaders, because we need to, as leaders, we need to inspire our people. We also need to model, because we cannot not only inspire and still do the same. We need to model it, and also need to mentor, right? We cannot just leave people, and go, right? We need to mentor them through this change and through this process, so we can adapt to the velocity of change and to the many challenges that are facing.
Absolutely. Many of you have expressed, how do we motivate people and how do we balance our time? Starting with that is the idea that we are all adapting and thriving. So whether we're creating a new culture at home or we're creating a new culture with our teams or organization, we're adapting and thriving to the remote work environment and to the new set of overwhelm. We call it OFUD, overwhelm, fear and anxiety, uncertainty, doubt, and juggling a lot. With that comes a need to really adopt new behaviors to adapt and thrive, getting more in touch with our values, and not just knowing them. Now is the time to know how. So we'll be sharing some know-how today and in future communications around those behaviors that give us the most, let's say, bang for the buck, right? Most impact with the least amount of time, things that can really create a difference in terms of how we're motivating and inspiring ourselves, our teams, our people at home, and how we're onboarding people. So a lot of people have asked questions around onboarding. Some people have said we've got a lot of stress. So again, really knowing our values and knowing what behaviors will support that. We'll be going into that. One of the biggest things we know that it impacts people at this time and answers a lot of the challenges that you're talking about today is creating deeper connection with the people that we are speaking to remotely, online, as well as again at home, and building more positive communication. So really a new way of communicating why, how, and what early and often, creating connected conversations and using positivity as a fundamental platform for that. And again, focusing again towards optimism and collaboration. There's a lot that if we wanted to focus on with fear and anxiety that we could stay in, and really today's personal leader, let alone leader of teams and families, is leaning and learning how to cultivate that optimism in their conversations.
And I mean, and we cannot do all that if we don't also change our core processes, right? Because at the end of the day, if we change all the previous, but we still have to go through the same road to behave, to act, to work, it's not really going to help. So also we're going to be talking about how do we need to adapt our core processes to be able to happen all the above, right? How to make it more simple, how to make it more focused on what really matters. So let's go into these 4 elements. And the first one, obviously, as we know, starts on the top. It starts with leadership, right, Shireen?
Yeah, so whether I am leading myself or a project or a small team or an entire organization or a global organization and team, leadership needs to evolve right now. And there is a critical path for behavior transformation. We believe that the best critical path for behavior transformation today, in order for us to evolve and help others evolve, is to take a very people-centric approach. We've heard of the expression evolve or die, right? So today's successful person and leader will evolve and elevate emotions, experiences, and outcomes for themselves and for those around them. So transforming business results and life results along the way. So this is all about, like you said, transforming into the new. We have 3 main focal points based on our model. We believe that when you generate the most powerful impact, and that pathway for behavior transformation starts with the self first. So getting really deeper into self-awareness, understanding your impact on yourself and on those around you, and elevating that. And again, you can do that whether it's remotely or it's in person. Taking personal growth in a new way. So for some people, maybe I look at my values are changing, and personal growth for me is I want to grow in terms of my overall well-being and balance, my ability to expand well-being in all categories. From that, we look at we ripple the impact out of being a more evolved personal leader, my personal leadership to myself, to the leadership with the team, creating alignment and unity between the leadership team to really help calm down that fear, anxiety, uncertainty, and doubt for the people around us. So whether I'm leading a family or I'm leading a friends or a project, let's get in alignment. Today's leaders more than ever, need to get on the same page, align, unify, and then move out towards the employees and the client base. One of the tools for that is also to create more clarity versus confusion. So a lot of people who are sitting at home right now and isolated from their managers and leadership, their concern is, I feel a lot of confusion. So clarity will really help. And it helps us, right? It helps us balance, again, our lives and increase fulfillment. And then last but not least, we ripple that out to the next level of all of the employees, people we know, really stepping and fully owning that power to inspire, model, motivate, and mentor. Empowering people versus fixing and blaming. And of course, creating ownership versus accountability.
We'll definitely go deeper into this, some of these elements. That's why let's go deep on some of the key elements that Shireen was mentioning.
So again, this is preaching to the choir, but self-awareness is step number one when we are deepening as a leader, leading our lives and others. Mastering yourself is true power. And now we all could use more sources of energy and power within ourselves. And this is one of them. Keep the inspiration, the focus, and the influence on others positive and strong. What is my impact on people? What is the wake of my emotions? And really understanding your emotional wake, your presence, your impact.
Totally. And only with that self-awareness, you can have clarity. I mean, how do you want to give clarity to your team and to your employees if you don't have clarity of yourself, right? So at the end of the day, it's very important to have that awareness about the strengths, but also about the weaknesses. Right? And we'll see more about vulnerability later. But it first is to have clarity, be in peace with that in order to build trust with yourself, build trust with others, and create those meaningful connections, right? So there's everybody's uncertain, and just being clear that everybody's uncertain, that's already a part of it, right? To build that clarity and trust. So that's the first step.
Yeah, and the highly self-aware person knows their values, they're aligned with them, and that's another piece of creating trust. Think back to a time when you worked for someone who lived with their values and led from their values, made you feel safe and made you feel a lot of trust to move behind them and with them. So alignment and unity. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. More than ever, this is a time to not go alone, especially when we're facing such a high degree for many people of loneliness and isolation as it is. The World Economic Forum says that loneliness and depression and isolation is the top stressor right now that is impacting people's health and longevity. So now more than ever, it's a time to come together, stay together, move forward together, and get on the same page around our why as leaders, our common purpose and goals, our how, our values and behaviors, and our what, our outcomes, and our plan. In fact, we have a colleague of ours, Carlos Javier, who he actually applies this model even with his family and children. What's our purpose as a family? What are our goals for the week? And maybe you can share a little bit about that.
It's basically like, how can you align on the outcomes and plan if you don't align in for the idea, the North Star, and then the how we're going to do it. And obviously then the rest is easier. Actually, I wanted to share also, we just did a project for the last 2 years, a beautiful project at a company. It's 4,000 employees, 50 countries. And when they were defining the values, one of them, they realized that unity was key and alignment was key, right? Because a little breach at the top is the Grand Canyon down there, right in the bottom, right? So they defined a concept called brotherhood, right? And if you haven't seen the TED Talk from Sebastian Junger, a really interesting one talking about brotherhood, it is basically, we changed it because brotherhood now in diversity world, that was too masculine. So the company is called GB Foods. So they called it GB Hood, right, instead of brotherhood. And basically, it's about caring. It's about putting the interest of the group, like you can see here in the picture, beyond our own, right? And when that happens, that obviously it's indestructible, and no tuna can actually eat those little fishes, right? And it shows support and care for each other throughout the journey. So alignment and unity, especially when we are separated with remote environments, it's even more important than it used to be before. Third element, ownership, big concept, Shireen.
Yeah, we've worked I've worked with leaders for over 15 years and at DH for over 10. And one of the big questions we get asked, and in these last 10 months, we're getting asked this even more, is how do I create accountability for my people? And I always revert back to them with, well, how about creating ownership versus accountability, and having them really see what's the difference in that, especially if we're working from home and our teams are working from home. How am I really going to make them feel that I'm asking for accountability in a way that feels good, that reduces anxiety, and again, boosts positivity and positive feelings? It's to create ownership. And ownership is about building desire and will. When I have the desire inside me and I want to, it is easy. When I have to, it is hard. So shifting from a have to and a sort of a compliance-based accountability to a desire and willingness. Will takes that desire and turns it into action. And from there, you create the accountability and the results. So what happens is people start to participate and feel immersed in what they're doing from a place of not just desire, but alignment and joy and some flow. And the results happen naturally because they're empowered around that outcome.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, the first element, it's very emotional, right? The will. The second element, it's more in the process oriented, right? When do we include, when do we make people participate? The earlier, the better. And the third element is results, right? So obviously accountability, it's there, but now it's owned accountability. A quick tip that I saw the other day in a forum for CEOs, let's try to change every time we say, I have to go to this meeting, change it for, I want to go to this meeting. Yeah. Every time we say, I have to do this, change it for, I want to do this. You will see how different it feels.
I can't wait to.
Right? I mean, it's totally different story, right? So this emotional process and then the outcome.
Another tip on this one, I'm sorry, another tip on this one I wanted to share is that people are really creating also pods. So if I have something, if I'm an employee or I manage an employee and I am responsible for just one task, and it might be hard for me to rally around that. So part of it is I create for people the conditions to where they can come together remotely or in person to participate, to share ideas, to share solutions, and for them to actually create their own plan on how I'm going to get there. So as a leader, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to help you build your desire and willingness. Here's the results that we need. What are the ideas that you have? What's the plan? What are the details? I can support that. I might tweak it a little, but really getting people to step in and create those steps. And in a remote environment, it's even more important.
Actually talking about steps, and I'm going to go very high level on this one. We'll share the recording later so you can go in detail, but how to build, what are the steps to build ownership? And very in line with what you just mentioned, right, Shireen? First of all, and I think it's very important, leverage or train the skills, right? Before giving ownership, ensure that that person has the skills to acquire the ownership, right? And if not, train them. You know, there's definitely a way to develop, right? Very important. Second, Shireen said that, so I'm not going to stop there, but inspire and build that desire. Once the skills are there, you know, share the why. And that's the best way to build desire, with the why, with the vision, right? With the illusion. And then once that, go define the process, the earlier, the better. And obviously set the KPIs that you're going to be measuring afterwards. Right? Very easy 4 steps that will be faster and will probably take you to the results even better, right? So you cannot really force ownership on people. Without step 2, really it's not going to happen. Very easy 4 steps. Into culture, right? Let's go into second bucket, right? Because I think, I don't know how we did in time. So yeah,
please
let us know, but
leadership
we did good on time. That's good. There's so much things we want to share. Second bucket, it's about, you know, the culture and the new behaviors. I mean, regardless of what values do you have personally or what values the organization, your organization has, the world is asking us to really adapt the culture, right? So these elements don't mean to be your new values, means how do we integrate and embed these elements into your day-to-day? First of all, authenticity, right? The world is more diverse. We're having people from all over the world working and collaborating. It's easier on remote environments. How do we allow people to be more authentic? And by the way, new generations are actually asking it more and more. Like they want to be themselves. They want to show their passion, their skills, and they want to shine. right? So how do we foster and embrace that diversity and authenticity? Second, it's about belonging. I mean, I'm here at my house for the last 12 months. I want to feel part of something, right? So how do we do that even in remote environments and create more connectedness and inclusion into that process? And the last one is about meaning, right? Meaning is like to what I'm collaborating, towards what I'm contributing, right? So giving that person no stars. So we're going to go in detail into these three elements. That's why I keep high level, but let's see the first one, authenticity, right? We have to be authentic.
Being true to ourselves and being able to express who we are ties directly to this new need for wholeness, transparency, and bringing your full self to work and to life. Be yourself, because everyone else is taken. You can try to be someone else. It's not really going to work anyway. What happens when you know someone, a manager or a leader or a friend or a parent or a child or someone that you know that in your life that's super authentic? You find that you can connect with them more. You feel safe, you feel inspired, you feel motivated, and you're really ready to go the journey with that person. A big part of authenticity these days and allowing room and space for us to bring our whole self to work, and our authentic self, is to be open for diversity. And that's not just diversity around race or gender or age. It's really being open to the diversity and feeling inclusive and including people who are different than us in many ways. And look at our webinar chat today. We have people from all over the world. There's all kinds of diversity that we know about and we're aware of, we're conscious of, and there's also areas that we're even unconscious of. And what's the value of that? Well, when we bring our whole self to work and we honor the diversity in other people, we are going to leverage those I would say those differences that make us broader and more expanded. And that gives us more expanded options, more expanded solutions, and ultimately more options for success.
I mean, what is one way to foster diversity, right? I mean, be in an environment that can allows me to live my personal values, right? I mean, and that directly channels through the anxiety and the stress that some people are facing that we saw in the challenges, right? If I cannot be myself, if I cannot live my values, right? And obviously they need to be aligned with the organizational values, right? And we need to find alignment, but we cannot force, and it's not going to work. We cannot force our company's values into people. We need to celebrate people's values and then find ways to align it so we can all work towards the same direction in the same way. So aligning personal and organizational values is key to reduce those feelings of environments that sometimes are creating stress, fear of being ourselves and not saying and voice out what we believe, what we feel, and in many ways what we think that could be beneficial for the business too.
Yeah, absolutely. And taking that one step further in terms of reducing the stress and boosting those positive emotions that we have, it's creating a flow, coming from a place of flow, whether we're creating it for our employees as managers or we're creating it for ourselves. The flow state is that state that we all know when things are humming along and we feel like we've got a little bit of challenge, but not too much. We're not bored, we're not overwhelmed, or we're not stressed. And cultivating and fostering flow in ourselves and in others is even more important than ever right now, because it directly, according to the science of happiness and positive psychology, it directly reduces stress, anxiety, and fear, and immediately, very quickly boosts our energy, our focus, and ultimately our outcomes. So aligning passion with skill, getting fired up about what you're doing, finding your personal why around it, shifting something a little bit in a way to make it more flow for you and for others, examining those roles, who's best at what. We do this all the time, even at DH, and to find out who's really the right person to do the right job. Are you in your zone of genius, as we call it, where things are going to flow and be easy for you, and be kind of fun? We've forgotten about that. So maybe incorporating that a little bit as well. A big tip for all of us that are working from home and have others around, especially, creating flow, and support for flow at home. Who's best at what? And integrating and creating more flow for all of those around us as well.
That allows us also for better collaboration. This way everybody shines, but we need to do it together, right? I mean, we've been doing this kind of work, Shireen, for I don't know how many years about, creating diverse environments and aligning people's values. But today we have a surprise for you. We have a super expert in the D&I, is Janine Carter. We'll made a special place at the end. So after the whole hour, we'll give you guys an extra 15 minutes for whoever wants to stay to ask any diversity and inclusion questions specific, because we know it's a big topic nowadays with everything that's happening in the world, right? So we wanted to give that wow. So we'll be back with Janine at the very end of the session, but that's our surprise to you. So what's another behavior that we need to change to adapt to that culture?
Yeah. So speaking of diversity, diversity is to invite everyone to dinner, and belonging is to make everyone feel at home. Today, through isolation, through separation, through onboarding people remotely, through trying to train and develop people only in the remote or primarily remotely, people are lacking in a sense of belonging, and they are longing for it. They're longing for more meaning in their lives. They're longing to be connected to what is the meaning of my job, my role, and my contributions, and what is the overall purpose or meaning of what we're doing and as a company in the world. So those are all important elements to be shared and explored and talked about in the workplace in an online format that allows for that, or of course an in-person one. One of our clients in Russia, they did an amazing job. They created a video for all of their employees that showed them the meaning that they contribute to the world, to their clients, how they're changing their lives, and then took everyone through an exercise that we designed for them where people could literally connect with a buddy, a contribution buddy, and explore together on their team and explore together how each one of them is bringing meaning and contribution into the workplace. When they connected with that and could see what their role was doing to the company and what their person, their humanness was doing to their fellow employees and teammates, their feeling of belonging deepened much more.
And we see, I mean, this contribution, we saw that there's the bodies and many systems that our clients and many companies are doing, because collaboration is more important than ever versus competition. We see that everywhere, right? So since collaboration is key and we want to make this interactive and we want to also model, as we said, for leaders, this kind of elements, why don't we collaborate a little bit, right? Let's take maybe 2-3 minutes here. And let's remember the rules before. We'll ask the question, write them in the chat. Don't press enter yet until we tell you. So we wanted to ask you, see what you guys think. What are some reasons you believe that collaboration wins over competition, right? So let's take 1 minute to think. What are some reasons that collaborating between people and finding things together wins over competing who goes first? So I'll do the same like Shireen, right? 10, right? What are some reasons that collaboration wins over competition? I don't know if I'm putting my fingers too fast or too slow, but basically, are you guys ready? Because you were very fast before. So ready, set, all right, chat. What are we saying here? Let me see if I can see the chat too. Solving problems, getting better results.
Talk about what people thrive when they feel safe and can focus on creation. So there is strength in numbers, and collaboration creates that strength. It also creates that synergy of personalities that you're talking about, Kathy.
Perspectives. I think, I mean, that's key. And I've gone through that path, and I've gotten mistaken through that path of assuming, and instead of collaborating, assuming, and I lost perspective, I lost ideas. So yeah, building different perspective and getting better results. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love the 1 + 1 3. I love that one. Thank you, Sylvia.
Yeah, and ego is removed. It's great. So it softens that. We become, much more about the we and how we're collectively moving from A to Z. So it allows us to grow faster as well. Great. So I'd love
Thank
to
you
share.
guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll share a quick story, an example of collaboration from one of our clients, and it was collaboration as well as boosting meaning and contribution. Our client DMG, they create big residential projects and homes for people to live in, high end. And during the initial days of COVID, the teams came up with the idea and then asked for funding and said, we would like to contribute to our community and create some gardens of positivity for them. So they actually created, as you can see, these beautiful signs that say hope and optimism and togetherness. And they contributed personally by bringing flowers themselves. So the company gave them some time and a little bit of budget. They went out, they bought flowers, they built these signs, and then they also created these boxes for the families called family bonding time, because family is one of their corporate values. So they wanted to bring their value to their community. They collaborated together, came up with this idea of the boxes, and then they felt this tremendous boost of contribution. So from the me, we community perspective, their impact was creating joy, and they felt a tremendous amount of meaning and fulfillment, and thus feeling like they were part of a culture of service.
It's a beautiful story. I mean, we have many, but that's an amazing story, especially in these times, right? All right, let's go into the next element, third box, key element. I mean, I know there's probably many experts in the room about communication, such a big subject, right? So we don't want to go in very detail into what elements in communication, but we want to focus on what are three big ones that allows us to create a positive environment for positive communication. One is obviously building a trusting ecosystem, right? And if you don't have that, it's very difficult to have all the communications all the ways. The other thing is creating a safe space, right? So people can share openly, can share freely without the fear of being judged or being, punished in a way. And then the last one is being present. I think that's a basic one, but I think it's never too old to remember that, especially in remote environments where people either have multitask, no cameras, and those things.
I feel like people today on the chat and our webinar are really present. So thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much. Yes. Like before, let me share three tools. I know there's many more. Three tools that will allow us to create a trusting environment, a trusting ecosystem, right? First one is 360 conversations. We're used to top-down kind of conversations, and I think it's important more than ever before to have 360 ones, top-down, bottom-up, cross-departmental conversations. It's like make people very accessible, make everybody accessible, because information flows and we need to know what's happening in all the different places. You're not at the office anymore, just raise your head and know what's happening. But it's like more important than like make people at one click away from you, right? So that we can break silos and we can act faster also thanks to these conversations, and also take care of people, right? Because if we don't have these kind of conversations, we're not able to actually understand. Second tool that I would like to share, and we'd like to look at transparency as a tool to create a trusting ecosystem, right? I like this quote that a friend, colleague of ours, Veronica, always shares, that is like, whatever you don't fill with communication, it fills out with rumors. And I think it's very important because, there's always been a fear of transparency, right? What do we share? How do we hold this information? When do we release it? Do we release it all? Is it going to create this kind of dude, transparency is a tsunami. I mean, with social media inside and outside the organizations and all these platforms talking about us, we've seen it in many cases that I don't want to go into. It's impossible to stop it. So let's be proactive about it, right? And it's proven, we've seen that even though the news are not the best, right? The reactions are actually very positive. We have this.
When I coach people, I even always say that transparency plus truth equals trust.
Right. So, and it's key. I mean, we have this example of this company that basically they had to lay off actually 3 weeks ago, 50% of their employees. And because the whole process through the year was transparent, was with the truth, was open, you know what the reaction was? Actually, the reaction was that first, thank you very much, because we knew that this was coming, and thank you because it took you too long to make this decision, right? Because we know the situation. So people took it in a very positive way, even though the news are horrible news, of course, right? And I wanted to foster this example because obviously being transparent about positive is easier, right?
Yeah, and just to give a quick proactive one, we have a client as well, as a smaller company, so they're able to do this. They actually went to all of their employees and told them, we need to cut people. And here's why. So they were very protective, and we're open to your suggestions. So the employees themselves came back and said, we'll take a unanimous cut across the board to our salaries and to our commission structure so that we don't have to lay anyone off. So the employees came up with a solution that even management and leadership wasn't really looking at.
So we'll see later about vulnerability, because transparency obviously hits into vulnerability, but key element there. And the last one, probably many of you guys know, so I'll be faster here, but it's the tool appreciative inquiry. Approaching things from a positive prisma, from a strength-based approach, right? Because it's focusing on how can we build on top, how can we learn, and how can we improve, instead of spending hours and hours trying to find the fault, the cause, and instead of just building and finding solutions.
Awesome.
Next, create safe space.
Yeah, we know we're giving you a lot of tools at a high level, and really that's our intention, is to give you these high level tools, gives you an opportunity to dig deeper in some of the ones that may sound interesting to you, or the ones that may apply most to your challenges. And you can also contact us, and we're happy to share a little bit more information on anything very specific. So safety and creating a safe space. Everybody's been hearing about psychological safety, emotional safety. We know that emotional stability right now, mental and emotional stability is on top of mind for many people. And mental and emotional well-being is stretched right now. So creating safety starts from the inside out. And from the inside, it's really first starting to embody this feeling of empathy and care, kindness and compassion for yourself and those around you, and encouraging those kinds of relationships. The next thing is sharing more, creating that environment and that space where we don't just talk about work. It's easy right now in the overwhelm to go straight into, we've got to do this, we've got to do this. People's schedules are stacked. But taking that little bit of time to connect more deeply, sharing our stories, our life, the impact that the OFUD is having on us, sharing some fun things, sharing good news, sharing a blessing and a gratitude and appreciation. All of these things go a long way. Last but not least, the ability to show and reveal our heart and our weaknesses, as well as our strengths and our capacities. And then last but not least, asking for support when we need it, are the hallmarks of vulnerability. And we cannot overestimate or overshare how powerful this will be for you at home and at work.
I mean, and if you think about it, Shireen, I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, we've seen it in many clients. When people share things beyond work, they find a lot of synergies, and that creates sense of belonging, that creates bonding between people, because even in vulnerabilities, they're not alone. We're not alone. When I share something, there's more people feeling the same I feel. And that it's actually creating positive environment instead of just, that fear space of sharing those things, right?
One of my spiritual, or I will say meditation teachers, says that, life takes great courage and great strength. The courage to love and connect fully, and the strength to be loved and to receive from others completely. So in the spirit of courage, asking for support isn't easy, especially for leaders. Yeah. But this is the time. We're not meant to do this alone. And this is the time to really come together, like you said, whether it's in collaboration or just raising the hand to say, hey, I need a little extra support right now.
Love it. Last one is being present. I mean, probably a basic one, but I think it's important to maybe share it a little bit.
Yeah, again, the idea of being prepared to be here and nowhere else, as our friends at Fierce say, Fierce Conversations, is giving your all to that moment. And when it comes to having a conversation, one of those ways that you can give your all is to set everything aside Really drop all of the chatter inside of you and outside of you. No cell phone, no iPhone, no computer, shut down your computer, everything, and really listen. When people feel truly seen and heard, amazing things happen. They respond differently. They come alive. They feel relieved. There's like a weight that comes off of them. 14 to 20% of communication is what is said. We all know that, right? So the rest is things like body language, but listening, being able to really pay attention, not have judgment, and embrace curiosity or some of your other more elevated values, reflect back with that person, clarify and confront if there's something that is not understood or there's an issue, and then really being able to share. So when you talk, as the Dalai Lama says, you are only repeating what you already know. But if you listen, you may learn something new, and you might make a big difference in that person's life, if even for a moment.
In a nutshell, at the end of the day, it's as simple as making the other feel that he's or she's heard, right? Giving her or he that experience, right? So do whatever you can. I mean, just, as a quick joke, but, it's put your phone and computer aside in remote environments. Don't do that because you probably lose the meeting. But there's way, but there's ways to actually show that. I mean, how many meetings we are that people are not with the camera, and how likely it is if the camera is not on to be multitasking, and the camera is forcing you to be there. I know it's uncomfortable. I know maybe we need to, put ourselves without the pajamas, but but it's important. Those things help making the other feel heard.
Right. That eye-to-eye contact, even through Zoom, it makes a huge difference. And, I actually turn off all my email and WhatsApp and text, all my applications off when I'm on Zoom, so I can really connect with people. They feel it.
I try to do that. Sometimes I don't do a great job, but yeah, I'm in my process too. And talking about process.
Perfection, progress.
Exactly. I heard the other day in a movie, it's like, today we turn the page, tomorrow we do better. All right, so talking about process, I'm going to simplify this one, basically because it's the focus of it, which is, let's talk about the core processes. We said that they need to go in line with everything we said already. And a very easy way to share what should we do in today's world and to overcome the challenges about operational challenges, now that we're working remotely, and the new organizations that are flatter, that are more, self-managed, and that require a lot more ownership and trust, right? It's one, simplify. It's important. I mean, there's this guy that New York Times bestseller is launching a book, actually, I think February 29th. It's called The Ministry of Bureaucracy. And basically this is like, he's going to organizations and creating the Ministry of Bureaucracy. And what they do, it's looking at every process and seeing all the things that are really useless. And believe me, all the processes, even the simple ones, have useless things sometimes, right? So how can we eliminate things that don't add value, right? And that are just being a burden for people to shine and do their job amazingly, right? The other thing is, how can we create space for agility and lean growth, right? I mean, things change super fast. So and that's why all these lean kind of evolutions, it's been very important, especially in IT, but I think it's in everywhere, right? So simplify the rules, the processes, and allow people to, get things done. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry.
The other thing is focusing on people, focusing on what really matters, on the experience, right? That's why I think defining human-centric processes for clients, but also for employees, is key, right? Because we want people to be themselves. As we said, we want people to shine and to bring their amazing selves to work. So if we create processes that turns us into robots, that's not going to happen, right? So how we do that? How do we embed those values and behaviors into our processes, right? How do we, create onboarding processes, attraction and processes that helps, performing processes, surveys, questionnaires, that not only is what you do, but is how you do it also important, right? So this becomes part of the DNA. And the last one, obviously, it's, if we all have that customer focus, right? So customer experience is like the most important thing. Well, then if that's the case, let's allow time to ensure that happens, to ensure that we give a wow experience. I mean, we have this, Luis, I would love, I don't know if we have time, but I want you to share. We don't have time? Oh,
we don't have it.
Beautiful story about a client.
I will ask you to take a moment to think about what is one thing that you could do in your life, at home or at work, to simplify and focus and really just kind of jot that down. It's such a huge one right now. There's so many studies that have been done. And one lens to look at is to look at, like Carlos was saying, the results. Oftentimes we get so caught up in action plans and all the steps and all the things that we need to do, and then what happens next and what happens next. But now could be a time to do things differently through the lens of simplify and focus, and to look at the results. What if there were only 3 things, for example, that could get me to that result, or if there was something to do to get to the result faster, what would it be? And we may find that all of us across the board are able to simplify and focus and reduce the overwhelm. And maybe doing things in a remote environment allows us to do things even in a better way. It's possible. So we can look at that. All right, great conversation.
Love it. All right, so we're getting to the end. So basically we talked about these 4 key elements, right? I mean, strategic and human challenges, focusing on leadership, culture, and new behaviors to evolve, elevate, adapt, and thrive. And then the operational side too, with the human side, which is how do we master positivity to improve communication, and how to simplify and focus our core processes to what really matters, right? So let's do a little exercise that we have some time left. So Shireen, you want to take it in?
Yes. So I'd like you to take a moment to jot down 1 or 2 takeaways from today's webinar that you will implement and activate and action with inspired action. And we're going to play Ready, Set, Chat again. So reflect on the buckets. We talked about a few concepts under each. In leadership, we talked, for example, about some self-awareness, how important that is. In culture and new behaviors, we shared some concepts around that. What was one of the key concepts for that, Carlos?
Well, we had about authenticity, we had about belonging, we had about contribution, meaning, and collaboration.
Yeah, so take a moment to reflect. Be prepared to share in the chat. We talked about self-awareness, alignment and unity, clarity, ownership versus accountability, the authenticity, the belonging, meaning, and contribution, collaboration.
Talked about creating a safe space.
Yeah, safe space. Trust and truth equals trust and transparency equal truth, and transparency equals trust. Vulnerability, listening. All right. Are we ready? Ready, set, chat. Put your answers in.
What is 1, 2 key takeaways? I mean, as you can see, we like to share inspiration. We would like to push you and nudge you towards action. So this way we can really change the world together.
Excellent.
Let's see the chat. Let's see what we're having here.
Ownership over accountability, 3 focal points for self-awareness, team leadership, and employee-centric. Thank you, Kathy. Being focused on accountability creates ownership. Thank you, Ms. Georgie.
Minimize distractions. I like that. Minimize distraction alerts,
Lots and lots of great work.
Nice. Like that one. Nice.
Transparency, what you don't fill out with communication fills out with rumors. So true. So let's take a couple of questions. We've got about 5 minutes. And after that, for those of you who would like to stay on for our diversity and inclusion Q&A, our expert, Janine Carter, will be available for an additional 15 minutes for those that have that time. And she will be answering questions around diversity and inclusion, equity, and belonging in the workplace. So before we go into that, let's pick a couple of questions if anyone would like to share after hearing all that you did today, maybe a couple of short ones that we can do together online. And then we'll be adding more responses when we email you after the session.
I have a question for you, Shireen. How did you like it?
I had a great time.
How did you enjoy it? I mean, I loved it.
Yeah, and so questions that people might have on anything specific that we could illuminate for you.
Well, I mean, while people may be thinking for the questions, why don't we share a bit what's next? Because, you know, since we're action driven, let's share what could people do to go deeper into these concepts.
Absolutely. So yes, so some of our next steps that we've got available for you if you're interested is on March 3rd, we'll be conducting a live coaching session. So it'll be different than this. This is a webinar. In the coaching session, we'll actually take you through the participants through a coaching process around, you know, building resilience for yourself in terms of leading your life or leading others. We'll dive a little bit more into some of these tools and help you create specific tactics over them. You'll look at the what and how for around one of your challenges. So it'll be very experiential. Facilitation will break you up into small groups and have you come back into the room. So it'll be what I would call like a mini workshop, basically a group coaching session. And that's March 3rd, and April will send you information on that. The next thing we have also for those of you that are interested in learning more, we've got an amazing group of corporate culture workshops. If you'd like to share a bit about that, Carlos.
Yeah, I mean, basically is if you feel that any of the things that you saw today or more, and you have some of these challenges you want to work on, I mean, feel free to go into that link. I mean, we'll share the link afterwards also in the email to look at what corporate workshops we have so we can prepare a session for you, for your organization, so we can work with your teams, with your leaders on any specific elements that you saw so we can help you evolve, elevate, adapt, or thrive.
Good. I have a couple of questions. I'm going to ask you a question, Carlos, from the audience.
Beautiful.
What do you feel is the main reason that joy and fulfillment are so rare in most workplaces?
That's a great question. We should probably ask a lot of leaders, but I mean, my assumption based on all these conversations is that joy, basically joy is a concept that has been always related to outside of work, right? You know, here you come to work, having fun, it's outside of it, right? So, and it's related when that work was a tough thing to do, a challenge. So actually, if you're enjoying too much, probably is that you might not be working. So the reason is, you know, focus on work and then enjoy outside. That's what I would probably feel that's the reason I've heard from leaders, literally. I'm quoting some of these leaders. So.
I'd like to add another component to that. Beautiful, Carlos. Thank you. Another reason that the workplace appears so void of joy and fulfillment is that there's a transition in priorities that's happened. It used to be that the focus was on productivity. And so everything that was done in the workplace, there were plenty of models for efficiency and productivity. There aren't as many models that people know of around happiness. At DH, we have a model, and it's a model that's proven and it has results, and the results tie directly to business. And that's part of it. So our model is that building a foundation, whether you're a person, a relationship, a team, a family, an organization, or even a country. And we've worked at all those levels. Having a foundation of values that you know and align your personal values to, and behaviors that are shared amongst everyone to bring those values to life. And these behaviors are designed by people. So having a foundation of values and behaviors, and being led by a higher purpose and meaning, and then being fueled by what we call habits of happiness, like gratitude, optimism, flow, all scientific pieces, mindfulness and kindness or altruism, compassion and empathy. There is an actual model. So what has happened is that many workplaces didn't know that there was a model that they could follow. But when they see that there is a model, they bring it in, because fulfillment and maybe they don't use the word joy. Many of our clients, half of them use the word happiness and positivity, and the other half use the words around resilience or being people-centric or culture-driven. So there's many avenues or doors with which to bring in this transformation, this new way of being, and using a model that works.
Totally. You mentioned the word flow, and I think it's important. Normally, the role descriptions are between skills and roles. And when we put a new element called passion in front of it, and we align the three of them instead of just aligning roles and skills, it's just a job based on productivity and paycheck. If you add the word passion in it and you align those the elements and even purpose, that's when you get joy and fulfillment, right? So you're not only good at what you do, you love what you do, and those things can start to appear.
Exactly. And yes, thank you. The other thing that they are starting to realize, and it's just slow, is that it makes money. You know, companies that have that prioritize employee engagement, employee happiness, well-being, wholeness, all of those things do end up being more profitable. And the results show that purpose-driven companies are 4 times more successful and more profitable than the average company.
Do we have a time for one more question, or should we maybe one more?
Yeah, we have a question around, let's see, our boss feels that he is intimidating and the staff won't go to him with issues. Do you have any suggestions?
That's a good one. You want to go on this one? This one's about presence and personal awareness.
The good news here is that the boss already feels that they're intimidating. So they have some level of awareness, and so they're curious. How come the staff won't come to me with issues and suggestions? So there's a few things. One of them is building on that self-awareness. And the next step from that is to maybe tap into this idea that vulnerability is courage, and asking a few people. So combining the idea of the 360 and the idea of courage and vulnerability, and maybe gathering some people above and below them at their role and asking, coming at it from curiosity. In what ways am I intimidating? And what are some reasons that people don't come to me with issues and suggestions? What might make them feel more comfortable to come to me with issues and suggestions? So I think that, again, being able to ask questions and listen, being open and reducing the ego enough to be vulnerable and say, this is what I'm hearing or what I'm noticing, can go a long way. And then last but not least is creating that idea of ownership, even in something like this, and coming to people and saying, I want us to own the issues and your ideas together. And I'm looking at shifting and opening. Everybody's changing, I'm changing too. And I'd like us to collaborate more on things, including the issues and the ideas that you have.
Totally. I mean, I would like to add, 200%, adding the fact that working with the people that are going to be part of that ecosystem to help them and help improve. It's like what Shireen said before, the non-judgment and the walking along. If somebody is willing to go that path of vulnerability, opening up, asking those questions, it's important also to work with the people to be kind, right, in the process, because it's a process, right, for that person. Step one, awareness, right, is there, but let's walk along with that person so he or she feels that he's taken care of in the way. Awesome. I think it would be great to take more questions, but we are over the time, and we want to give space also to Janine Carter. I mean, she's Chief DEIB Innovator and Advisor for DH. She's former the head of D&I at Facebook, a great expert on it, and we know it's a big topic on it. So let me get it to Shireen, so she knows her better. So,
well, first I'd like to say thank you so much to all of you that are jumping off at the end of the hour for your presence and your curiosity. Happy to answer more questions on email. Please email us directly. You've got our information up on the top there of your screen, the bottom of your screen. And also we have, in terms of our master classes, in terms of our workshops, our coaching, and also our consulting or our culture consulting. These are the kind of things that we address and work on. So if you have even any little bit of curiosity around that and understanding or learning more about it, do please feel free to contact me or April about it. And we're happy to share some ideas with you on that. So I'd like to introduce to you Janine. I've had the pleasure and the honor of working with this amazing expert who was at Facebook leading their diversity and inclusion program, and now has created her own practice, and she is called Incluvations, and she's also our chief DEIB innovator and our beloved advisor in this space, and working with us to really bring the DH model to life through the lens of DEIB where needed. So Janine, welcome.
Thank you so much. Wow, what an amazing, amazing talk. I hope that all of you got value out of that. I definitely did. I'm always learning when I talk to and get to listen to Shireen and Carlos. So thank you so much for that. It's an honor to be with you. I know this is sort of a surprise, and all of you are probably running to your next Zooms, but we wanted to at least introduce me, let you know that I exist in this wonderful family at DH. We are working on multiple things as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. You've gotten some high-level concepts and definitions around the way that we view this. So it's an exciting time. As Carlos and Shireen were talking about, I have been in the work for a long time. I won't mention how many years at this stage. But it's been a while, and I've worked internally within corporations, so I understand how this can be challenging in terms of implementing diversity to organizations, working on creating roadmaps, frameworks for implementation. So I have a long background, but I don't want to use the time up with my introduction. We can send you my bio, but we did want to open it up to see if you had any questions for me before we ended.
I do have a question, Janine. What would
I did see.
Oh. Can you hear me? I think it's cutting a little bit. So
Okay.
the question would be, what do you think is the biggest challenge that companies face in terms of D&I? And it's a composed question. And what do you think would be the first step to address any challenge that D&I companies face?
It's a great question. You know, the conversations that I've been having lately with C-suite, as well as folks that are responsible for the people systems within corporate environments, are really trying to figure that out. Like, how do I get started on this behemoth, work? And for us, I think the first thing is, and you talked about this already, is taking a simple approach, especially now. And that is to begin to get a sense of so some form of an assessment or audit or analysis, whatever term that your organization is more comfortable with, but it's really talking to people about what they think could be better within the organization as it relates to culture, diversity, and inclusion. Taking that information and feeding that back to leadership, informing them of what's going on within their culture, and then creating some sort of roadmap, for lack of a better term, to determine how we're going to sort of address the issues within the organization. So it's really a similar approach to how you would look at other problems within these environments, taking that sort of methodology and folding it over diversity and inclusion related efforts. I think the thing too, Carlos, just to add, and hopefully this is helpful for the audience, is that alignment of leadership is really, really important as well. And so that would be the second stage. So really having some deep conversations about where people fall as it relates to diversity and inclusion. There are so many nuances to this work. The definition of diversity is difference. So every conversation you have with people around diversity, there's going to be a nuance, there's going to be a learning, there's going to be something that's new as it relates to the authenticity of the people that you are working with on these efforts. So that's really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see how authenticity, which is a part of our number one DH value, be true to yourself or to your weird or authentic self, is so important in this work. Janine, you said you had seen a question. If you could repeat the question back, and then I have one as well if we don't receive more from the audience.
Yeah, it came up earlier in your piece around onboarding and keeping a culture of inclusion when working remotely. And I thought that really connected to this conversation as well. And you actually addressed it, but I'll be more specific as it relates to diversity and inclusion. And the thing that's important with this is really looking at what those personal and organizational values are, as you said, but then also what are those inclusive behaviors that we need to have in place. And so examples of inclusive behaviors look like giving and seeking feedback, valuing differences, which Carlos and Shireen also emphasized. When I say valuing differences, it is about race and gender and those dimensions that you oftentimes hear in these contexts, but it's also those other dimensions that you might not know unless you communicate about them. So what are people's skill sets? What education do they have? Where are they from? All of those things that could add value to what it is you're working on in, probably in today's time, these pods. And knowing that information helps you create, cohesive groups that collaborate better, advocacy for one another. And then it sort of starts that support system that I think we all need given everything that we're grappling with right now.
Super.
Oh, nice. I did receive a question here in the chat. How are you seeing diversity changing as it relates to the workplace versus, probably before?
Yeah, well, I'd love to know the context that this person is sort of coming from. If it's a United States context, where the person is reaching us from. But without that information, what I'm noticing is that, the demographics are shifting. So for instance, in the United States, majority population is now consisting of more people of color, people from different ethnicities, what was traditionally known as minority populations. And so with that shift in demographics, it's really important to continue this work, really look at this notion of cultural competency, understanding the different cultures that exist within our respective societies, because these are the people that are entering the workforce. And so we have to be cognizant of that in order to not only recruit diverse people, but also retain diverse people. And so these are the sort of the complexities that I'm seeing start to shift. It's not just about the numbers, which is where we started, back in the day, several decades ago. And then, we've even moved from inclusion. We're now talking about more and more equity as well as belonging, which Shireen and Carlos also talked about, which is really important. And belonging is that emotional outcome that I don't think businesses are used to talking about, which is where we are now.
Yes. Could you share just a little bit about equity? What would that mean for people who may not be as familiar, but maybe they're familiar with diversity and inclusion? We touched on belonging. Could you share just a little bit on
equity, will come up a lot when we're having conversations around racial and social justice, for instance. It also comes up when we're talking about fairness. And it's a complex subject for many because it sometimes seems that it's about special treatment. But what equity does is it helps us to level the playing field. So, there are people that have been traditionally not included in systems within our organization. And so how do we get everybody to that level playing field? And so sometimes there are programs and efforts that we have to put into place to at least get us to here in terms of the level playing field so that people can succeed, can get promoted. So it's really looking at fairness. It's looking at how do we make sure that everyone can thrive within an organization. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm sorry, do you have another question?
I was just looking to see if I could pull out the points that came up.
We have one more question that I felt was, it sounded like it could apply to both of us, really, to share a little bit. And the question was, moving management from accountability to ownership might be a challenge. Are there measurement metrics to help them? And I'm thinking that whether you're looking at it through the DEI lens or not, if you, yes, the short answer to the question is yes. The broader question is, we need to work with an organization or with the leader alignment. The idea of ownership comes into it is when we look at ownership, we're looking at also underneath it is collaboration. Along with it is this working with DEI. So I wanted maybe, Janine, for you to speak a little bit about DEI and ownership and how that can impact people, and what are some of the business results we see from that when we give people that ownership.
Yeah, it really is this connected system that has to happen. So what I'm talking to clients about more and more is understanding the individual that are in these respective roles, who are responsible for leading and or implementing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts. So what I mean by that is, if someone is responsible for bringing in more diversity within the organization from a recruitment perspective, what is that person's passion and purpose around the work? So really understanding that. If the person's responsible for retention, what connects them to the work in terms of their personal experience? What is their purpose around doing it? And then moving from the individual level to the organizational level and connecting it to the values. I'm finding that when you do that process, and it doesn't have to take a long time, it's really just having a few conversations with the people who are involved in the effort. When you do that, then the person becomes more connected to the work. They develop the passion even further for diversity and inclusion work. And so therefore they have that desire and will that we need in order to do the implementation. So it really connects to a lot of the concepts that you were talking about earlier. And it does take a little bit of extra time, but it's well worth it in the end. The results then start to look like increased representation in terms of diversity. You also get to see different programs popping up that relate to retention, like mentoring programs. And then you start to ultimately see over time the return on investment as it relates to all of the different things that you're doing within your system. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
No problem. I see some other messages here.
Yes, so connectedness is definitely at the root of so much of what we talk about, and deepening connectedness in our modern world right now, with where we're at, with so many people living behind a screen with their work team colleagues, is creating meaningful relationships, meaningful connections.
That's right.
So we hope we've given you some ideas today, and we look forward to giving you more on things that will actually shift behaviors, deepen connections, giving you some tools that can be applied to more consciously live and adapt and thrive in this new remote, semi-remote, culture-driven work and life that we're in. Carlos, would you like to share anything else in closing?
Actually, it's been a pleasure. I would like to thank, I think gratitude is one of the key elements that we always preach. And I think I would like to finish with gratitude. Gratitude for the people always here, but gratitude for you, Shireen. It's amazing to have designed this with you and delivered this with you. Thank you, Janine, for being here and being our expert in D&I. Thank you, April and the team, being there with the questions and the tech things. Thank you so much. It would not be possible without you.
Thank you,
So
April,
thank
Stephanie,
you.
and Amanda.
Thank you so much, guys.
You.
We are here for you, for anybody that's here. So keep delivering happiness to the world. Thank you, guys.
And keep an eye out for an email from April. Have a great day, rest of your day or night.
Bye-bye.